This is the rod and piston out of the truck. So this is what they call a Gen 3. Gen 3s are really easily identifiable, the connecting rods, because you have this round edge and a square edge on the other side. The Gen 4 rods are really easy to show because they have two squared edges and it's like a really beefy looking I-beam. So long story short.
These are fracture rods.
Yep, they're both fracture rods.
They're both fracture rods?
So it's a fracture cap. So like your small block Chevy and your LT rods, they made these like in the Vortex and stuff. These were like the same style rod. The small block rods were obviously shorter and they were a milled cap. So this, they changed to a fracture cap when they went LS. And other than that, it's similar, and torque to yield bolts, which is small blocks still use normal bolts. So
Gen 4 is torque to yield too?
Gen 4 is torque to yield as well. All LS is torque to yield. The difference between this is Gen 3, press fit. Gen 4, floating pin. So Gen 4, you've got a heavier beamed rod. You've got a floating pin. These are still just press pin shit. And as you can tell, it did not like the hydro log.
What gets me is the difference from one side of the beam to the other.
Man,
it really bent.
Like it really knocked the bender rod. Like, and it wasn't like, I'm not gonna say it wasn't a bad hydro lock, but I mean the injector stuck. I took the injector out of the injector cleaner. I installed it. Somehow, I don't know if there was something in the fuel rail that washed into that injector, and like, I mean, obviously I was cleaning the injectors for a reason, so clearly there was an issue. So anyways, this thing goes and like stops. So I did the right thing, took the plug out, took the injector out, checked the injector, pumped all the fluids out of it, and I fired it up and I heard the old...
So what do you name this video? FFI?
Yeah, I don't know. Something. Thank you, Holly, for your...
F'd by fuel injection?
Thank you, Holly, for your Chinese injectors.
I think you need to thank the Chinese company that sold you the fuel filter that was not the Micron it said it was.
Also, yes. Thank you, Amazon. Anyways, it's...
Long story short, the fuel injection...
Don't be cheap. Yeah.
The truck started to miss and spit fire and everything else, and
So, yeah,
the injectors were plugged up because of a fuel filter that was vastly larger orifice than it was supposed to be.
Yep. So, long story short, so now I'm sitting here going, well, you know, I've already got one head off. It's not really that much harder to take the other head off. Is it worth just throwing 8 Gen 4 rods in it? And I mean, I could check the rings while I'm here and actually gap the rings for boost. Like,
I'm going to say the answer to that is yes.
that would be probably really not stupid. Because clearly, and I mean, there is no getting around it. You look at just the beam width, let alone anything else. Look at the width of the beam on these two rods. I mean, you cannot tell me that there's any world that this rod's...
Well, actually, this is a gas rig. It's not like that injector's huge.
No.
I don't think it took a hell of a lot to hydrolock that.
It did not at all.
And that little rod obviously ain't that strong.
No, that little rod is not that strong.
And you have a big ass turbo.
And I mean, like, just look at the width of the rod this way. It's taller. It's a little narrow. Like, there's less, well, not even. Actually, this side of the rod's so cut in. That rod's thin, like 1/8 thick in the middle. This rod's the same thickness in the center. It's wider this way and it's wider this way. And it's just a better, like this web has good strength. I mean, this one's not bad.
Didn't we gram weigh those when we did Cody's rig? Yeah. I thought these was a huge difference.
The piston and rod Gen 4 weighs 50 grams more. And I mean, the piston...
It's all in a rod.
There is nothing different in the piston other than the wrist pin on a Gen 4 is 943. And the piston pin on a Gen 3 is 927, like a small block Chevy. So, I mean, you get 20 thousandths different in wrist pin there.
Mm-hmm. The Gen 3 pin's a thicker wall, is it?
Not,
looks like?
Well, maybe a bit. Maybe a bit.
Gen 4 is a larger diameter.
Larger diameter. And... really, the pins in these pistons exceed the rating of the piston. Like, the piston will let go long before the pin.
Is that a hyperdeutectic or what is that piston?
Yep. So both Gen 3, Gen 4 all have coated skirt hyper pistons. The bolts are, I think, identical from rod to rod. Just really, these rods are a shit ton stronger. The only other upgrade rod you can get is, like, LS7s had a titanium rod set, but they caused enough issues too that it's not really I mean, anything affordable, go to your junkyard, get Gen 4 rods or Facebook Marketplace, whatever. Gen 4 rods is like your factory race rod. The Gen 3 rods, now they're okay. Scott ran these in his Mustang, one of my customers, and he was making probably 700 horse on these
That
rods.
Lexus Motor has Gen 3 rods?
Yeah, and it ran for forever until actually he broke he went ahead and broke a valve spring and dropped the valve on it. But I mean, he ran these rods. It probably made 525 on motor, and he was spraying 200 down its throat for like a year. And I mean, he races like 7 passes a day every Friday night. Like go, go, go. They're not to say that these are weak, but you don't get a chance to screw up on these. Like these have one.
Seems like that rod bent pretty easy to me.
Yes, they're a little bit wet spaghetti.
I mean,
these rods have one screw up in them.
I flooded bad small blocks before and never bent a rod on the starter.
Yeah,
like that's not.
I think this is probably pretty comparable to a stock small Chevy rod. Like I mean, everybody talks about.
I never bent a small stock Chevy rod. I know I have heard of people that did, but
I mean, to me, this like that rod's not a good rod. No, there's in no world is this a good rod. In no world would I put this in a performance engine I was building.
That Gen 4.
This on the other hand, you know, you could sell me on
that Gen 4 rod ain't far from the Howard's powder forged rods I used to run in the dirt motors.
Now,
but they're only rated for 600 horse, and they got a better rod bolt than this. So.
Now the really trick part is this Gen 4 rod looks great and everything, but it's got that weird 943 pin. And a lot of the 943 pin, like nobody makes a great aftermarket pin or anything.
Oh.
Now the Gen 5, the LT rod is 927 pin. It's floating 927 pin, and it's as good as this rod, or probably even a bit better. Like they're a very nice rod to look at them side by side. Like the Gen 5 rod is killer. Like it's a factory race rod, really. This is even like if you find one from a 6.2 or a 5.3, like the newest 2015 and up, those are like killer. And that'll work even if you're doing a stroker kit or something, you could save a couple $100 by running those rods. And I mean, these
Gen 3, Gen 4 rod tutorial.
Yeah, and Gen 5.
And Gen 5. Except we didn't have a example rod out here.
We have one in the barn.
Yeah.
But yeah. So kids, don't use this garbage. I am probably going to do the right thing and pop the other head off.
Swap out well, you're almost there, other than you got to pull the turbo off.
Yeah, it's going to suck, but I have to redo gaskets on that kit anyways. So I'm going to blow 8 rods in it. I'm going to check the ring gap. I'm going to put ring gap in it. I'm going to do whatever I've got to do to have it done properly, and then the bottom end's done properly. I'm going to replace the lifter trays so I can keep the stock cam for now. And when I want to change the cam, all I got to do is unbolt the
spin the lifters up,
unbolt the rockers, and blow air in the cylinders to change the springs. But that way, because if you don't change the trays on these, the lifters don't always stay up, and you'll have a lifter fall back into your cam, and you can't get your cam out and everything.
Then you're screwed.
And you're really screwed. Or you have to pull the dumb dowel trick where they stick dowels through and the other 2 oil holes to hold everything up, which is junk, and I don't want anything to do with that. So I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to change the trays, unbolt it, spin it over, lifters go up.